Hey guys, I'm Angela and welcome back to Hobby Night. Today I'm going to be using my Tamiya Airbrush to paint up a troll. If you've been following this channel for any amount of time, you know that I have been very intrigued by airbrushing, but I had kind of been a little terrified to actually get started, which is why last week I tried the USB-C airbrush to build up my confidence. Now I'm feeling a lot more emboldened to actually try the Tamiya Airbrush that Tamiya actually sent me. I was very grateful for this. They contacted me after I built up a Merkava tank, and they were like, hey, we heard that you might be interested in airbrushing. We saw you mention it in that. Would you like an airbrush? And I was like, yes, I would. I have always wanted to give it a try. So today, that is what we're going to be focusing on. I want to use my Tamiya Airbrush to paint up a troll, but specifically I want to use it to go ahead and get my troll primed up using a zenithal prime and then apply a base coat to a couple of key larger areas on the model to see if that will speed up my process. So without further ado, let's go ahead to get to airbrushing. I have to say my experience with the Tamiya has greatly encouraged me to want to keep using this tool. I found it so easy to work with, especially after having used the USB-C airbrush kit before. This time I went ahead and did the same thing I did before, used a black paint in first to go ahead and prime the entire model up, and then afterwards I went ahead and used a white paint to go ahead and do a zenithal prime over top, making sure to really keep my angles specific so that that white paint did not get the underside of the model, because I got some really nice blacks like in the armpits of my troll and a couple other areas on the belly of the troll, which I just thought looked really, really stunning. After I was done with the zenithal, I'm pretty happy with that. I wanted to try and actually do a bit of detail work, specifically on that rock that he's carrying in his hands because he's gonna smash you with it. Well, I decided to pick up some airbrush specific paints, and this time I'm using the Citadel brand one, and I went ahead with Mechanicus Standard Grey. Now, I actually think I should have thinned this paint a little bit before I ran it through my airbrush, because afterwards, my airbrush got clogged and I had to do a thorough cleaning of it because it just was not working.
A great Zinchian snake wormed its way out of the pot.
It was a little gross and a little terrifying, and so I will probably be thinning the air paints going forward. However, with that knowledge in my brain at that point, when I moved on to my next color, which was using Athermatic Blue, the contrast paint, I did go ahead and put a little bit of thin in there just because I was a bit paranoid. Now, I don't actually know if this was necessary for the contrast color because it actually was significantly thinner than the air paint had come out of the pot. It doesn't matter though, because I got a great and even coating on the actual model, spraying the entire troll up, and I am so happy with how much quicker this felt like it was to get done. Now, contrast paint is already a very quick medium to work with, but running it through the airbrush, it was so good, and I even still got a little bit of that contrast effect, which I was a little bit afraid I was going to lose with my Athermatic Blue paint. Now, I think that's specifically because the Athermatic Blue is very pale and already extra translucent in comparison to some of the other colors, but I am so pleased with how this worked out. After the first coating I did using Athermatic Blue in the airbrush, I decided to go back over it with a second coating because I was actually a little concerned I had over-thinned the paint and it wasn't going to be sticking well enough. Now that I'm done and the second coat has dried, I'm extremely happy with what I have going, but I want to push it a little further. We're gonna come back to the hobby desk. We're gonna actually do that with some more traditional mediums that I'm used to. So let's go ahead and jump into that next. It's that time of the video where I interrupt to tell you about my Patreon and to let you know that we just added a Discord server which all tiers get access to. So if you're wanting a way to chat with me, share with me your projects, or just tell me what board games you're playing, definitely make sure to check the link below and check out my Patreon. I am so very pleased with how the airbrushing went with this model, but there are some things that I want to do to continue to enhance what I've already got going on. And the first thing is going to be taking care of his flesh. I'm going to use Kroxigor scales on all of that rocky material that is on his back, his legs, and his arms. I really want to deepen it just slightly to give it a little bit more of a green color tone because I'm going with an oceanic vibe here, and I really want those teals and greens to show through. Once we're done with that, I'm very happy with how it's looking, but I want to add a little bit of a highlight to really enhance that rocky texture. So I'm going to take Athermatic Blue, my original contrast color that I use as a base, and mix that together with some white paint from the Army Painter. I know, I never mix paints, but today I decided I needed a very, very pale teal. I didn't have any other options, so it's what I'm doing. We're going to apply this as a light dry brush to all of that rocky texture once more to really enhance it and bring out some highlights. I love the way that this is looking, and honestly, dry brushing is one of my all-time favorite techniques, which is why we're gonna move on to the next step with some more dry brushing. Says we need to paint that big boulder he's got in his hands because it could also use some dry brushing to help enhance it. We're going to be using a variety of different gray tones, going from a mid-gray tone into a very, very pale, almost white gray color tone, and you can use whatever colors you prefer. I just happen to go with 4 distinct different ones to build up my color gradually. I'm going to be applying each of those colors with a slightly lighter dry brush than the last, except for the very last one, where I'm going to be using a pure white. And the reason I'm not going to be going as light and the reason I want to go as heavy as I am is because I'm focusing this on the crystal that is poking out of the boulder. I really want to apply some other contrast colors to this later to make it stand out, and I want to be as pale as possible to really enhance that. Once we're done with that, we can move on to some details. We're on to the details, and there are quite a number, but I'm going to focus on a few specific ones. First and foremost, because I want this guy to have a little bit of an ocean vibe, and I was kind of imagining him being from the same region of Lustria that all of my lizard men come from, specifically that chameleon skink that I painted up a while back. So I went back to that paint list and pulled some colors from it, specifically Darkoath flesh. I'm going to be using this on any of the leathers that are all over the troll. We're also going to be pulling out Skeleton Horde, a tried and true color, and we're going to apply this to his feet, any of the bones on him, his teeth. One of the other regions that I wanted to focus on is there's actually a bit of a mossy texture on the bottom of the rock, which I wanted to enhance using Gutripper flesh and then applying a couple of different green shades. Now, originally I had considered using Mortarian flesh instead of Skeleton Horde, but I decided to use it as a wash over top the greens to help enhance that color tone. From there, the last main thing that I want to focus on is that crystal, because we spent a lot of time dry brushing it, making sure it's nice and bright and white. And for the reason we're doing that, the reason that we want to do that was because I'm going to apply Doomfire Magenta on top of it. 1, I love the name of this paint. 2, it is a bold, beautiful pink color tone that I think complements perfectly with the teal color tone I've used on my troll's flesh. The one other thing that I used Doomfire Magenta on is his warts. I wanted to enhance them and make them look a little bit like they were sore and have them just stand out, and it worked perfectly. It ended up being a little bit of a purple color tone, and I think it's brilliant. I love this color. I honestly think I should add it to my top 10 list, and I knew that as soon as I made that top 10 list that I was going to need to update it. It's always how it goes. However, this color is brilliant. We're gonna put it on that stone that's in the bigger rock he's carrying, as well as the ones that he's got in that little bag on his pouch. From there, we just need to take care of the base. All right, with my details complete, we can move on to the base. And for this, I'm going relatively simple, and I want him to tie into my skink some more. So for that, I'm going to use Armageddon Dust because I want a little bit of a beachy feel to his base. After that has thoroughly dried, I'm going to use a Seraphim Sepia wash over top of it, let that thoroughly dry as well, and then we're coming back in with Tyrant Skull to do a quick, light dry brush to make that ground look a little bit sandier. After that, it's just a matter of putting on a couple of different tufts from Gamer's Grass, my favorite tufting company, and then we can look at the final model. And here he is, my big, beautiful, ocean-themed troll, and honestly, I am so happy with how he turned out. And part of that, the majority of that, is just because of how easy I felt like getting him done was, and that was entirely due to the Tamiya Airbrush I was using. It was a blast using it. I absolutely am so grateful to them for having sent it to me, and I'm going to be using the airbrush a lot more going forward, both in my videos and just my day-to-day life as I'm painting up models, because it just has sped up my process way more than I really ever gave it credit for. I think my fear of using a new tool that seemed expensive and delicate and a little unwieldy really held me back from actually jumping into this part of the hobby. And now that I have been able to get past that threshold, I am so excited to try a lot of different projects. Not only do I want to use my Tamiya Airbrush to paint up terrain, I want to use it to finally tackle that giant Cthulhu I have from Death May Die. I want to use it to tackle really a lot of the larger models that I own, including some of the Tamiya kits that they sent me, because I have a couple of planes that I want to build up, and I think painting them as I go might be a fun project. That'll probably come to the channel maybe later on down the line, either later this year or next year, who knows, but it's something that I want to explore, and because I have this tool now, I absolutely can. I hope that you guys have enjoyed following along as I learn airbrushing. Hopefully it's opened your eyes, if you haven't tried it yourself, to things that you can do, things that you shouldn't do, and how you can explore using new tools safely and with a lot of fun, and just really expand what you're doing in this hobby. Before I head out, I do want to give a huge thank you not only to Tamiya for sending me the airbrush, but also to my patrons for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we would not be doing this, so thank you very, very much. I've been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night.
Are you ready to cook, Jesse?
I am.